Now to Declassified. One of the CIA's fiercest operatives is now opening up, telling the previously top secret stories about fighting terrorism around the world. Rick Prado is now 70 years old, living in St. Augustine Beach and teaching security tactics. His career, spanning 3 decades, put him in some of the most dangerous areas of the world, tracking terrorists, including Osama bin Laden. For the first time locally, Prado is talking about his courageous career with News4Jack's anchor, Mick Michelucci.
I worked with the drug enforcement guys.
You don't have a wall like this, filled with accolades and medals, without taking big risks.
I'm one of those blessed individuals that could say I never woke up in the morning and said, I got to go to work today.
Work for Rick Prado.
They were lobster divers, so I trained them, compass swims, all that kind of stuff.
Was a little different than your typical 9 to 5.
I think the big question here is, how did you get into the CIA?
Well, like most things in my life, it was backdoor.
Yes, the Central Intelligence Agency. This Cuban-born former street gang member became one of the U.S. government's top operatives.
When God puts a path in front of you, he also forges your mettle along the way.
Prado grew up living comfortably until Fidel Castro took over, bringing communism and violence to the island of Cuba.
I was 7 years old the second time that they took over my town, and I saw people get shot right in front of me. There was literally a firefight right in front of my house.
A few years later, his mother and father made the difficult decision to put him on a plane to escape to the United States.
My dad, the biggest lesson that I could say he ever gave me is his conviction for freedom. Because my dad, imagine taking your only child who's 10 years old and putting her on an airplane to a country that you've never been, may never even be able to visit. And I don't know that I would have the courage to do that.
His parents eventually made it over, and the family settled in Hialeah, near Miami. Prado got in and out of trouble before learning about the military. He joined the Air Force Special Operations, then the National Guard. But when he applied for the CIA, at first, they denied him.
They told me we're firing, not hiring.
Until they needed a Spanish speaker to go undercover in Nicaragua to fight the Sandinista. He lived in the jungle, blending in with the resistance fighters for more than a year and narrowly avoiding assassination, all in his first counterterrorism job.
They didn't know about Marx or Lenin. They just knew that their churches were being burned, their priests were being beat up, and that their wives were being molested.
From there, Prado would move around the world, a warrior working in the shadows, from Latin America to the Middle East to Asia and Africa. Some assignments still classified. His job was to document the most dangerous organizations in the world.
What was the closest you ever came to being captured or killed?
There's four times when I was really in bad harm's way.
Prado writes about his brushes with death in his new book, Black Ops, The Life of a CIA Shadow Warrior. It chronicles his rise to the chief of counter-terrorist operations, where he and other operatives tracked Osama bin Laden long before the September 11th attacks.
Most people in the agency, most people in the United States had never heard of him.
They began following him in 1995 with a plan to take him out, which Prado says went all the way to the White House before getting denied.
It was my quote very early on that he was like the godfather of terrorism. With the benefit of 20/20 hindsight, if we would have been allowed to take him out of business in whichever way was legal, perhaps the call would have happened. Chances are the bombing of our embassies in Africa simultaneously wouldn't have happened. And probably 9/11 would have not happened.
While his task force ultimately led SEAL Team 6 to bin Laden, not getting him sooner is one of his biggest frustrations to this day. Ultimately, a major factor in his decision to retire from the agency after 25 years.
Throughout your time in the agency, do you have any regrets? Would you have done anything differently?
I think that I would have pushed a little harder on some things. But, I always did what I was asked to do or volunteer for things that other people wouldn't volunteer for.
Proud of what he's done, a fierce fighter for freedom.
The biggest problem we have in the United States is that we don't know how good we have it. It's made of humans, and there's corruption, and there's all kinds of problems, but it is still the best country in the world. You don't see people here building rafts to try to get to Cuba, right? People try to come to this country because there's that one glimmer of hope for them to have a better life.
The CIA actually had to review and approve Rick Prado's book before it was published. There are parts of his life that he's still not allowed to talk about. But he says he wants to make this clear. While it's not perfect, the agency is filled with people with great integrity and an even greater love for our country. I'm Vic Michelucci, Channel 4, the local station.